A quorum being present, I call the meeting to order. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty, justice for all. Welcome, everyone, to the June 17, 2024 Acushnet Town Meeting. My name's Les Dagan. I'm your town moderator. I've been informed that the warrant has been properly executed with return of service in accordance with our bylaws. I'd like to begin with introductions, beginning at our head table with the gentleman seated close to me.
I got him turn it up. He's turning your phone. I told him. Jamie Kelly.
Bob Hinckley, Chairman of the Board of Selectmen.
David Wonar, Board of Selectmen.
Kevin Gasper, Board of Selectmen.
Mike Boucher, Chairman of the Finance Committee.
Susan Delgado, Vice Chair, Finance Committee.
Pam Labonte, Town Clerk.
And now seated directly below me, the Finance Committee, starting with the gentleman closest to the hallway.
Robert Ferrera, Finance Committee.
Good evening, Kristen Flynn, Finance Committee.
Bob St. Jean, Finance Committee.
Eric McGlynn, Finance Committee.
Eric Chu, Finance Committee.
Pete Benoit, Finance Committee.
And now the school committee members seated with the gentleman closest to the hallway.
John Howcroft, School Committee.
Sarah Gomes, Vice Chair, School Committee. Alyssa Cordera, School Committee.
At this time, we reserve some special time for this segment for a meeting for our police chief, Chris Richmond, who would like to address the town meeting. Chief, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Can you hear me okay? Good evening, everyone. Everyone in the audience, everyone on the stage. It is with bittersweet feelings. I just so everybody knows, and what I believe is the worst kept secret, is I gave formal written notice of my intent to retire this fall to the Board of Selectmen and to the town administrator. I've followed that up with some correspondence with each one of the members of the board individually. And my letter is, I guess, would be public record. It speaks for itself. It's my time, and I just wanted this opportunity to be able to thank everybody on the stage, every one of you. I've worked with you in some capacity, most recently as chief the last 5 years or so. As I look at the Board of Selectmen, there's one member of the board, Mr. Gasper, that's the sole remaining member of the board that appointed me nearly 5 years ago. And for that, I thank you, and I thank you for your support over the years. Same thing with the Finance Committee, same thing with the School Committee. Again, I've known a lot of you for a long time, and it's just my time. My letter will be out there. You can read it. It's nothing. I'm not going to waste everybody's time. But I also want to turn around. I'm going to turn my back, Mr. Moderator, for a second and address the crowd here. I also want to thank everybody here. I've had interactions with people here for probably the best part of the last 30 years, and I value that. I just want everybody to know that I've always tried my best. I just want to say thank you. I also like to say thank you most of all to the members of the police department, past and present, that are here. They've made my job the last 5 years a lot easier than it could have been. And then there's a lot of people that I've worked with 25 years prior to that have we've gone through a lot and done a lot. So, Mr. Moderator, with that, I just thank you for allotting me that time, and I would just encourage the board to promptly move to determine the process for my successor. The department deserves that stability and that continuity. Thank you.
Chief, thank you for your many years of service to the people of Acushnet. We wish you the very best as you embark on the next chapter in your journey through life. And now, at this time, please join me in a moment of silence for Mr. Norman Fredette, our tree warden and former member of the Board of Public Works, who passed away suddenly in early May. Thank you. And I'll close this moment with Norman's trademark ending every conversation he had. God bless. We understand and appreciate that all of you have busy, demanding lives, and we thank you for the privilege of your time. Each and every one tonight will have the opportunity to question, comment, amend, modify, and ultimately approve or reject each article in this $36 million budget. This is your meeting and your tax dollars. Your participation is not only encouraged, but is your absolute right. A few housekeeping items. Please note that the center floor is reserved for registered voters in town and Acushnet department heads only. Non-registered voters, visitors, observers are to be seated to the rear of the auditorium or to either side. Each registered voter was presented with a blue card upon verification of voting status, and those cards will be the only means of voting tonight when raised to be counted. Kindly silence all cell phones so as not to disturb the meeting. Please note the location of the emergency exit nearest you in the event we need to evacuate the building. And the restrooms are in the hallway to my right. Now I'll go quickly through the process summary. I know many of you heard it before, but if there are any new attendees tonight, please put up with me. I won't be reading every article verbatim, but provide a summary of each. The full text is on the handouts you were given when you entered. If you would like to speak on an article, line up at the microphone. Clearly give your name and town address. Non-residents will not be allowed to speak unless they are department heads, town employees, or a majority of the registered voters agree to let them speak. You have the absolute right to understand what you are voting on. Articles are written to comply with the law, and the full intent may not be clear to you as well as others. Everyone here is entitled to ask any question of an article, and we will address every question asked. Procedurally, all questions should be directed through the moderator to maintain decorum and make efficient use of our time. Speak only to the motion at the moment. Rude or disrespectful speech will not be tolerated. Direct conversations between participants will only be allowed if it serves to answer important questions and is deemed to be beneficial to the meeting efficiency. Remember, there is a distinct difference between questions and answers and debate. All may speak on a motion as many times as they like, but no one may speak twice until all who wish to speak have spoken once. I do reserve the right to limit discussion once we reach the onerous point of repetition. Without objection, I reserve the right to recess at any point. Motions must be made to amend any line item which will be voted on. Then we need to vote on the article as a whole. Motions to amend must be in writing and signed by the proponent. When an article has multiple line entries, I will read each line item individually. If you wish to discuss any line item, please raise your hand and state hold when I read that line. We will return to that line item when all have been read. You do not need to identify yourself to hold a line item, but be prepared to speak on it when we return to it. And now let's get going. Article 1, to see if the town will accept the reports of its officers, boards, departments, committees, and commissions as printed in the 2022 annual report or act on anything relative thereto. Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote to accept the reports of its officers, boards, departments, committees, and commissions as printed in the annual report.
Do I have a second? Second. Finance Committee recommendation.
Finance Committee recommended passage of this article.
Discussion. Hearing no discussion, we'll put it to a vote. All those in favor of Article 1, please raise your card. Those opposed? Article 1 passes unanimously. If there are Maria Rigo and Robert Rigo, please go out to the hallway here and see that lady with the yellow blouse on. Thank you. Article 2, to see if the town will raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds a sum of $3,329 to pay bills from prior fiscal years or take any other action thereon in relation thereto. This vote will need to be a 4/5 majority or 80% of you vote affirmatively for it to pass. Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds a sum of $3,329.99 to pay bills from the prior fiscal year. Maya.
Finance Committee recommendation.
Finance Committee voted article.
Discussion. Hearing no discussion, we'll put it to a vote. All those in favor, raise your card. Those opposed? Article 2 passes unanimously. Articles 3 through 9 are considered a consent agenda motion. And under this agenda, annually recurring items, articles may be grouped together for passage. All of these appear each year in the warrant and include housekeeping items. I will aggregate a number. These are routine annual articles enabling the town to do business, being done for the efficient use of time. I propose we vote on them together. If you, again, as I mentioned earlier, want to discuss an article individually, raise your hand and state hold when I read it. We will return to that article when all have been read. Again, you don't need to identify yourself until we return to that article. And we will then vote on the consent agenda in its entirety. Here we go. Article 3. See if the town will vote to appropriate a sum or sums of money from the PEG Access and Cable Related Fund. PEG stands for the Public, Educational, and Governmental Cable Channel. Salaries and wages, the sum of $240,000 for the expenses of public access as follows. Salaries and wages, $100,000. General expenses, $90,000. Cable Reserve Fund, $50,000, for a total of $240,000. And this sum be raised as follows. Cable franchise fees and cable-related revenues, $240,000 total, or take any other action thereon. Article 4, see if the town will vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to apply for state or federal grants and to expend any monies received as outlined in the appropriate grant application or take any other action thereon or in relation thereto. Article 5, see if the town will vote to accept and expend any sum or sums of money that may be available from the Commonwealth of Mass Department of Transportation for Chapter 90 type construction improvements and/or reconstruction of public ways and associated equipment, and to authorize the Board of Selectmen to enter into contracts relative thereto, to appropriate said sums or sums in anticipation of reimbursement from the Commonwealth, or take any other action thereon or in relation thereto. Article 6, see if the town will vote to authorize the town treasurer, with the consent of the Board of Selectmen, borrow money from time to time in anticipation of the revenue for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2024, in accordance with the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 4, and to issue a note or notes as may be given for a period of less than 1 year, in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 17, or take any other action thereon or in relation thereto. Article 7, see if the town will vote to authorize the members of the Cemetery Board to perform work in the cemeteries and to allow the Board of Selectmen to determine the compensation to be paid to said members, or take any other action thereon or in relation thereto. Article 8, see if the town will vote to authorize the members of the Recreation Commission to perform work in the park and to allow the Board of Selectmen to determine the compensation to be paid to said members, or take any other action thereon or in relation thereto. Article 9, see if the town will vote to allow the Board of Library Trustees to sell for the sum of $1 the discarded books and periodicals of the Acushnet Public Library to the Friends of Acushnet Public Library, a nonprofit library support group, or take any other action thereon in relation thereto. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Moderator, I move Article 3 through 9, the so-called consent agenda as printed in the warrant.
Second.
Finance Committee recommendation.
Finance Committee recommended these Articles 3 through 9.
Hearing no discussion, we'll put it to a vote. All those in favor of the consent agenda, Articles 3 through 9 inclusive, raise your card. Those opposed? Consent agenda, Articles 3 through 9 passes unanimously. Article 10, see if the town will vote pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53E and a half, to set the limits on the total amounts that may be expended in fiscal year 2025 from each of the town's revolving funds established under the Acushnet General Bylaws, Article 21, revolving funds as set forth below, or take any other action thereon or in relation thereto. Once again, I will read every line item. If you'd like to discuss one, state hold. When all have been read, we will return to any held items. Recycling Fund, Public Works Department, $10,000. Conservation Commission, $5,000. Soil Board, $20,000. Parks and Recreation Commissioners, $12,500. Council on Aging, $45,000. And the Public Library Trustees, $6,000. The reason for this is Mass General Law, Chapter 44, mandates the reauthorization of maximum expendable amounts annually by town meeting. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town fix the maximum amounts that may be spent during fiscal year 2025 for the revolving funds established for certain departments, boards, committees, agencies, or officers in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53E and a half, as described and printed in the warrant.
Do I have a second? Finance Committee recommendation.
Finance Committee voted to approve this article.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your card. Article 10. Those opposed? Article 10 passes unanimously. Article 11, Massachusetts Strategic Health Group. See if the town will vote to transfer from free cash or otherwise provide for payment of the sum of $81,301 to complete the participant equity fund payment associated with joining the Employee Health Insurance Group, Mass Strategic Health Group, or take any other action thereon or in relation thereto. A little background: in FY 2024, Town joined an employee health insurance purchasing group to save health insurance premiums. Town issued requests for quotes and proposals from other providers and converted to a different group purchasing entity, Mass Strategic Health Group. In FY 2024, the town funded initial contribution to the group's reserve trust fund for $100,000. This article will complete the funding of the town's contribution to this fund, and even though the funds are held by the Mass Strategic Health Group, the funds are segregated in trust for the town. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote Article 11 as printed in the warrant and to fund said appropriation, transfer from free cash the sum of $81,301.
Do I have a second? Finance Committee recommendation.
Finance Committee voted to approve this article.
Any discussion? All those in favor of Article 11, raise your card. Those opposed? Article 11 passes unanimously. Article 12, Emerald Bus Company Superior Court Case Settlement. See if the town will vote to transfer from free cash the sum of $74,178.77 for a settlement payment by the Acushnet School District to Emerald Bus Company and settlement of Superior Court Case Civil Action number 2273 CV00012, or take any other action thereon or in relation thereto. Now, the school district reached a settlement relative to claims asserted by Emerald Bus Company relating to the 2020-21 school year. Payment of $74,178.77 will be in full satisfaction of all monetary claims, assessments, fines, and attorney's fees relating to the case. Do I have a motion?
Moderator, I move the town vote Article 12 as printed in the warrant and to fund said appropriation, transfer from free cash the sum of $74,178.77.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Finance Committee recommendation.
Finance Committee voted to approve this article.
Discussion. Hearing no discussion, we'll put it to a vote. All those in favor of Article 12, please raise your card. Those opposed? Article 12 passes with opposition. Article 13. See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer $145,000 from available free cash for any or all of the following capital improvement projects and purchases, or to take any other action thereon or in relation thereto. This article will fund all of the fire department's radio and alarm technology updates and the relocation of the radio system repeater. I will read the line items. Item A is to upgrade 2 Vision 21 radio box fire alarm receiver units for $105,000. The reason for necessity is the units which monitor the systems at our town buildings, schools, and several private businesses are obsolete and parts no longer available. Item B is to upgrade the radio system repeater and associated equipment and relocate it to a tower at 143 Peckham Road. The equipment Existing is outdated and Mendel Road Tower is inadequate. Upgrade will provide better, stronger signal and more coverage. That's the total of $145,000. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Moderator, I move item A and item B of Article 13 as printed in the warrant, and to fund all items, transfer $145,000 from free cash.
Finance Committee recommendation.
Finance Committee voted to approve this article.
Any discussion? Now let's put it to a vote. All those in favor of Article 13, raise your card. Those opposed? Article 13 passes unanimous. Article 14. This is the Senior Tax Work-Off Program. It's a lengthy article. Excuse me. I will paraphrase it. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate a transfer from free cash the sum of $20,000 for the purpose of providing a payment voucher for services rendered to the town. This is to resident property owners who have attained the age of 60 years, and it's used to reduce the real estate taxes for the property in which they reside, subject to the following conditions. As I mentioned, elderly residents over 60. Participants shall receive pay of $15 an hour for each hour of service rendered, for a total not to exceed $1,500 in a calendar year. Participants must agree in writing prior to participating in the program to receive their compensation in the form of a voucher to be presented to the treasurer tax collector, who would be applied to their real estate obligations for the property in which the participant resides. State and federal taxes will be deducted from the wages, and participants who meet the eligibility guidelines will be selected by the Board of Selectmen on a first-come, first-served basis. Take any other action thereon in relation thereto. This program has been a very successful program that helps seniors in town help pay $1,500 maximum towards their real estate obligation. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote Article 14 as printed in the warrant and to fund said appropriation. Transfer from free cash the sum of $20,000.
I have a second. Finance Committee recommendation.
Finance Committee voted to approve this article.
Any discussion?
Mr. Moderator, I just want to make a comment. I would argue, at least from my perspective, this article and the next one that's coming up are probably the two most gratifying things that I've done as a member of the Board of Selectmen. And I want to thank the taxpayers for funding this. I think it's a great program. It's given both our senior population and the next article, our youth, an opportunity to help the town out, grateful, which we're very grateful for. So thank you for your support.
Any further discussion? Let's put it to a vote. All those in favor, please raise your card. Article 14. Any opposed? Article 14 passes with opposition. Article 15. Youth Employment Service Program. Again, a lengthy article. I will paraphrase it. If the town will vote to raise and appropriate a transfer from free cash a sum of $30,000 to fund the Youth Employment Service Program, again for services rendered by youth to the town. They must live in town, meet the eligibility requirement. Compensation would be at the rate of $15 an hour for each hour of service rendered, not to exceed $4,000 in a calendar year. State and federal taxes will be deducted, and participants who meet the eligibility guidelines established by the Board of Selectmen shall be selected on a first-come, first-served basis. This service was a new program last year designed to be a companion program for the senior tax work-off, but focusing on youth employment, designed to instill work ethic for providing financial and social benefits to resident youth, including the co-op program for Acushnet Old Colony Regional Vocational Technical High School student. Do I have a motion?
Fund set appropriation transfer from
Do I have a second? Finance Committee recommendation.
Finance Committee voted to approve this article.
Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, put it to a vote. All those in favor of Article 15, raise your card. Those opposed? Article 15 passes unanimously. Article 16, General Stabilization Fund. Excuse me, see if the town will vote to transfer from free cash the sum of $100,000 to the General Stabilization Fund or take any other action thereon or in relation thereto. According to municipal finance best practices, the town needs to maintain an amount equal to 5% of the total projected general fund operating revenue for the next fiscal year in its unrestricted stabilization funds, but with less than 15%. With this transfer, the general fund will be at $3,604,795.31, which is 10.0% of our projected 2025 operating budget revenue. Keeping this fund balance will assist the town in maintaining its bond rating, showing fiscal responsibility and stability to bond and credit rating agents. Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator, I move the town transfer from free cash the sum of $100,000 to further fund the general stabilization.
I have a second.
Second.
Finance Committee recommendation.
Finance Committee voted to approve this article.
Any discussion? Let's put it to a vote. All in favor? Article 16. Those opposed? Article 16 passes unanimously. Article 17, Community Preservation Fund. See if the town will vote to appropriate or reserve from fiscal year 2025 Community Preservation Fund estimated annual revenues in the amounts recommended by the Community Preservation Committee for committee administrative expenses, preservation projects, and other expenses in fiscal year 2025 as follows. From fiscal year 2025 estimated revenues, administrative expenses, $13,000. Historic Resources Reserve, $26,000. Community Housing Reserve, $26,000. Open Space Reserve, $26,000. And from the undesignated balance of the Community Preservation Fund, $85,000, for a total of $176,000. This ensures the town's CPA accounts are CPA compliant, which requires certain funds set aside for open space, community housing, and historical projects. Now, the projects that are in this total, the town administrator has requested $13,000 for administrative reasons. Recreation and Parks, $17,000 for an ATV. Historic Commission, $7,886 for the Long Plain Museum fence, outside repair and/or installation. And the Perry Hill Church National Register nomination consultant, $8,000 for a total of $45,886. Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator, I move the town with the recommendation of the Community Preservation Committee reserve from FY 2025 Community Preservation Fund estimated revenues, $13,000 for administrative expenses, reserves, $26,000 for historic resources, $26,000 for community housing, $26,000 for open space, and from CPC unrestricted revenues, $85,000 to unrestricted reserves, and further to fund from the recommended funding sources the recommended community preservation projects set forth in the CPC table and other expenses as printed in this warrant.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Finance Committee recommendation.
Finance Committee voted to approve this article.
Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, we'll put it to a vote. All those in favor of Article 17? Those opposed? Article 17 passes with opposition. Article 18, Meals Excise Tax. To see if the town will vote to accept the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 64L, Section 2A, to impose a local meals excise tax of 0.75% or take any other action thereon or in relation thereto. The rationale for this local option meals tax is to give the town the option to improve local revenues and to diversify the sources of local revenue. Revenue estimates are between $50,000 and $100,000. And for your information, over 80% of South Coast communities have opted into this option. Do I have a motion?
Moderator, I move the town accept the provisions of the Mass General Law 64 to limits thereto, and to impose a local meals.
I have a second. Finance Committee recommendation.
Finance Committee voted to approve this article.
Any discussion?
Ryan Resendes,
Good. You got to hold that very close, sir.
Ryan Resendes, 30 South Main Street. I can't, in my right, raise my hand and tax. How much money is generated through excise tax in this?
I don't have that exact figure. I don't know if the town administrator or the
Mr. Moderator, if I could. The question was asked on how much money is generated through excise tax, I believe.
Correct.
It's just over $1.7 million.
Mr. Moderator, how much is actually given to us?
Mr. Moderator,
Yes.
there's $100,000 in a DBW that's dedicated to road paving that I asked the Board of Selectmen to support a couple of years ago because we're up to, I believe, $1.4 million for budgetary purposes out of excise tax.
Once we're taxed, it's only going to go up. We're taxed to the max. There's creative ways to up tax revenue. Won't ask about it fast. Pilot programs, zoning can be changed. Something else. Not vote. Raise my own. Create a new tax.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Moderator, if I
Yes.
could.
Yes.
Ryan, I totally respect your opinion, and you're a great public servant. You do a lot for the town on the Conservation Commission, and you're always quick to have good suggestions. Unfortunately, we're in a situation where we have to consider this. None of my colleagues, we're doing this under duress, quite frankly. There's a reason why we're at town meeting on June 17th, is we couldn't come to a balanced budget. We were literally looking for $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. Unfortunately, this is an option that's been put before us. Do I want to see it? Do I want it? No, but it's something that I think we do need in order to fund some of the contracts and the general government. And if there is one tax that we can get money from out-of-towners, this would be it. It spreads the pain a little bit. Again, not ideal. If it was under any other circumstances, we wouldn't be proposing this at all, but we do it under duress because every penny literally counts towards our budget and our overall operations.
Eric DeBarros, 21 Elaine Way. Am I not mistaken? No, we just voted in $17,000
Eric, so that money was taken out of the Community Preservation Fund, which goes towards recreation. So rather than, taking from the general fund, which would then impact, staffing or programmatic, this came out of CPC, which we're getting a reimbursement from the state, as we just explained.
Thank you.
Is there any other discussion? Yes.
Most people who know me know I'm not a fan of any new tax. However, because we have such a limited commercial and industrial tax base in this town, this does ease a little bit of the burden off of you, the resident, property tax owner, residential property tax owner. This was not, an easy decision. It's going to generate a small amount of money, but it's something to help us with our shortages of revenue. This was one of the most challenging years that we've ever faced, balancing a budget. I've been on this committee for 18 years, and this was really a difficult year. And again, I am no fan of creating a new tax, raising taxes, totally against that. However, we as residents eat in other communities' restaurants, New Bedford, Dartmouth. So we are paying this tax when we eat outside of Acushnet. And when other residents from outside of our community come here, they're paying for some of this tax as well. So I tried to look at it from that perspective when I gave this some thought. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll put it to a vote. All those in favor of Article 18, please raise your card. Those opposed? Article 18 passes with opposition. Article 19, AFSCME MOA. That stands for the Associated of Federal, State, County, Municipal Employees Memorandum of Agreement. See if the town will vote to approve and fund in the amount of $10,065 for funding the MOA, amending the 3-year collective bargaining agreement between the town of Acushnet and AFSCME Council 93. Funds to be taken from surplus funds available from excess funds in the overlay account as released by the Board of Assessors, or take any other action thereon. In midterm negotiations to address disparity in the public safety dispatchers' salaries, as well as to address redlining and elimination of administrative assistant classification in favor of a principal court classification, salary grid was amended to include a $1 per hour raise for dispatchers and a $1.50 per hour raise for EMD dispatch managers. The classification of principal court position at $22.49, $25.06 per hour, rather than the administrative assistant position at $24.12 to $27.01 an hour. Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote Article 19 as printed in the warrant, to fund said appropriation transferred from the surplus of the overlay account, the sum of $10,065.
Have a second. Finance Committee recommendation.
Finance Committee voted to approve this article.
Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, we'll put it to a vote. All those in favor of Article 19? Those opposed? Article 19 passes unanimously. Article 20, Steel Workers CBA Collective Bargaining Agreement. See if the town will vote to approve and fund in the amount of $40,830 for the 3-year collective bargaining agreement between the town of Acushnet and the steel workers. This is for selected department managers and inspectors. Said funds to be taken from surplus funds available from excess funds in the overlay account as released by the Board of Assessors, or take any other action thereon. This Division of Labor Relations Certified Collective Bargaining Unit has bargained with the town for over a year to reach this agreement. The standardized agreement replaces all individual employment agreements for all of the positions in this unit. $26,830 would be the fiscal year 2024 retro payment, $14,000 for fiscal year 2022 and 2023 signing bonus in place of 2-year retro payment. Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote Article 20 as printed in the warrant and to fund said appropriation transfer from the surplus of the overlay account the sum of $40,830.
I have a second. Finance Committee recommendation.
Finance Committee voted to approve the article.
Any discussion?
Moderator, I just would like to commend my colleague, Mr. Gasper, who is the lead negotiator on this. It was the first time in our history, in the town's history, that we had our department heads in a union, so that was kind of an interesting dynamic, and so thank you to Mr. Gasper for navigating that for us.
Any further discussion? Let's put it to a vote. All those in favor of Article 20? Those opposed? Article 20 passes unanimously. Article 21. The Teamsters CBA, again, collective bargaining agreement for the police. See if the town will vote to fund in the amount of $445,750 for the collective bargaining agreement between the town and the Teamsters Acushnet Police. Said funds to be taken from surplus funds available from excess funds in the overlay account as released by the Board of Assessors, or take any other action thereon or in relation thereto. The police unit had been without a contract since fiscal year 2021. This agreement includes retro payments to cover past years, an additional raise, as police officers are now expected to adhere to the provisions of the Massachusetts Peace Officer Standards and Training, known as POST, the certification process. Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote Article 21 as printed in the warrant and to fund said appropriation transfer from the surplus of the overlay account the sum of $445,750.
Do I have a second? Finance Committee recommendation.
Finance Committee voted to approve this article.
Discussion.
Mr. Moderator, again, contract negotiations are never easy. Sometimes you've got to, both parties have to put on the boxing gloves, but I think in this instance, we both did that, but also, while we did it, continue to have an open dialogue and maintain a respectful dialogue throughout the process. The men and women of our police department, they put their lives on the line every day. And the degree of difficulty is like none other in town government. And I know the board is extremely thankful for their service, and we urge you to support this contract this evening.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll put it to a vote. All those in favor of Article 21? Those opposed? Article 21 passes unanimously. Article 22, Holcomb Street Project. Capital Expense Stabilization Fund transfer. See if the town will vote to transfer from the Capital Expense Stabilization Fund or from available funds, but to file for, accept, and expend grant or grants and matching funds provided by grants, or otherwise provide a sum or sums of money not to exceed $600,000 to repair and or replace the roadway, sidewalk, water infrastructure, sewer infrastructure, stormwater drainage infrastructure for Slocum Street, or take any other action thereon or in relation thereto. My understanding that this would take a 2/3 majority vote. Regular, simple majority? Yep. Okay. I was informed by town council the law changed. This is a simple majority to pass. Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator, I move the town transfer from Capital Expense Stabilization Fund the sum of $600,000 to further fund the repair and a replacement of the roadway, sidewalks, water infrastructure, sewer infrastructure, and stormwater drainage infrastructure, the Slocum Street Opera project.
Do I have a second? Finance Committee recommendation.
Finance Committee voted to approve.
Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll put it to a vote. All those in favor of Article 22? Those opposed? Article 22 passes unanimously. Article 23, Water Special Revenue Fund Transfer. See if the town will vote to transfer from the Water Special Revenue Fund or from available funds, or to file for, accept, and expend grant and/or matching fund money provided by grants, or otherwise provide a sum or sums of money not to exceed $600,000 to repair and or replace the roadway, sidewalk, water infrastructure, stormwater drainage infrastructure for Slocum Street, or take any other action thereon or in relation thereto. This also, is a simple majority passage. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town transfer from the Water Special Revenue Fund the sum of $600,000 to further fund the repair and/or replacement of the roadway, sidewalks, water infrastructure, sewer infrastructure, and storm water drainage infrastructure for the Slocum Street Opera project.
Second.
Finance Committee recommendation.
Finance Committee voted to approve this article.
Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, we'll put it to a vote. All those in favor of Article 23? Thank you. All, any opposed? Article 23 passes unanimously. Article 24, capital borrowing for Slocum Street. See if the town will vote to transfer $1,800,000 from available funds, borrow, file for, accept, and expend grant or grants and/or matching funds provided by grants, or otherwise provide a sum or sums of money not to exceed $1,800,000 to repair and/or replace the roadway, sidewalks, water infrastructure, sewer infrastructure, and stormwater drainage infrastructure for the Slocum Street project, or take any other action thereon or in relation thereto. Folks, this will take a 2/3 majority to pass. Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote to borrow the sum of $1.5 million to fund the repair and/or replacement of the roadway, sidewalks, water infrastructure, sewer infrastructure, and stormwater drainage infrastructure for the Slocum Street Opera project under pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 7-1, or any other enabling authority, and to issue bonds or notes of the town, and further to authorize the Board of Selectmen to take any other and all actions and enter into and execute any and all agreements and other documents as may be necessary or convenient to effectuate the purpose of this vote.
Second.
Finance Committee recommendation.
Finance Committee voted to approve.
Any discussion?
Mr. Moderator.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen of the town meeting, thank you for approving the last two articles for Slocum Street. The town received roughly $2.9 million in ARPA funding. The Board of Selectmen immediately said we need to do Slocum Street. There's been a $1.5 million transportation bond bill sitting in the governor's office in the legislative branch since 2014 that has been dedicated to Slocum Street but never acted upon. This borrowing is basically a substitute in case we don't get that $1.5 million. The project cost in total, we're looking at roughly 5.3. There's some fluctuation in those numbers by several $100,000 with contingencies, police details, and construction administration costs that we believe can come down exorbitantly in excess of $500,000. But this is what the engineering firm has asked us to plug into that number. So this is just a borrowing article in case that $1.5 million transportation bond bill doesn't come to fruition. However, Selectman Warner, myself, and Selectman Hinckley have all advocated to our legislative delegation. Mr. Warner got a letter from Senator Mattingly's office. I talked to Rep. Schmid's office, and Mr. Hinckley had a conversation with Rep. Strauss's office. They've all forwarded letters in support to the Mass DOT and going to the governor's office to release the $1.5 billion in the transportation bond bill. All this is a substitute. If we don't get the full amount, then we would have to borrow some amount of money. But we are actively seeking other ARPA funds from other communities that don't have shovel-ready projects. So it is in our hope and best guess that we won't have to act upon this borrowing.
Thank you, Mr. Gasper. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll put it to a vote. All those in favor of Article 24, please raise your hand. Those opposed?
Thank you.
Article 24 passes unanimous. Excuse me. Article 25, our operating budget. See if the town will vote under the provisions of the general laws of Massachusetts, Chapter 41, Section 108, or any amendments thereto, to fix the salaries of all elected officials and to fund collective bargaining agreements for fiscal year 2025, and raise and appropriate any sum or sums therefore of money for the maintenance of the several departments of the town and for other necessary charges in accordance with the amount recommended by the Finance Committee as shown in the final column of the warrant, or take any other action thereon or in relation thereto. Now, I will take a motion for the budget as a whole soon. I will then read each total budget dollar figure by department and/or category. As I mentioned earlier, I won't read every line item. They're in the detailed handouts made available to you when you enter. If you wish to discuss a budget, raise your hand and say hold when I read that budget. And we will return to all held budgets once they've been read. You do not need to identify yourself to hold the budget, or be prepared to speak on it when we return to it. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote pursuant to the provisions of the Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 41, Section 108, any amendments thereto, to fix the salaries of all elected officials, all officers, and all employees appointed or employed, to fund collective bargaining agreements, and for the maintenance of the several departments, and for other necessary charges in accordance with the amounts recommended by the Finance Committee, printed in the warrant, and to fund said appropriations, transfer from available funds, raise and appropriate as follows. Taxation, state aid, and local receipts, $35,349,440. EMS reserve receipts, $550,000. Water surplus fund, $60,000. Debt premium FB, $1,550. Golf enterprise fund offset, $89,878. Other source of funds, $132,823. Total, $36,183,691.
I have a second. Finance Committee recommendation.
Finance Committee voted to approve this article.
Here we go, folks. Reserve fund, $150,000. Town meeting elections, $35,343. Moderator, $875. Selectmen, $273,868. Finance Committee, $2,900. Accountant, $230,071. Assessors, $187,645. Treasurer Collector, $271,821. Town Council, $100,000. Technology, $236,025. Town Clerk, $157,783. Board of Registrars, $42,225. Conservation Commission, $84,250. Soil Board, $16,500. Planning Board, $90,650. Board of Appeals, $6,150. Town Buildings, $219,568. General Government total, $2,105,674. Public Safety, Police Department, $2,956,031. Fire EMS Department, $1,131,509. Inspectional Services, $136,000, I'm sorry, what's the next page? $156,782. Sewer Weights and Measures, $1,169. Emergency Management, $17,900. Animal Control, $59,496. Forestry, $19,000, for a public safety total of $4,341,887. Old Colony Regional, $2,909,968. Acushnet School Department, $16,393,663. Education total, $19,303,631. Public Works Highway, $1,006,076. Snow and Ice, $110,000. Street lighting, $27,350. CMAS, $1,322,612. Cemetery, $6,789. Water Reserve Fund, $60,000. Public Works, Water, $1,797,118. Water Debt Service, $206,992. Public Works total, $4,546,937. Board of Health, $158,714. Council on Aging, $136,678. Veteran, $177,217. Human Services total, $472,609. Library, $299,508. Recreation, $25,225. Parks Department, $49,967. Historical Commission, $9,160. Miscellaneous, $12,000. Culture Recreation total, $395,860. Regional Government total, $3,748. Debt principal, $330,000. Long-term debt interest, $98,035. Short-term debt interest, $61,250. The debt service total, $489,285. Pensions, $2,062,439. Insurance, $2,471,421. Non-departmental total, $4,533,860, for a general fund total of $36,183,691. Any further discussion at all? Hearing none, we'll put it to a vote. All those in favor of Article 25, please raise your card. Those opposed? Article 25 passes unanimously. Article 26, the Golf Enterprise Fund. See if the town will vote to appropriate a sum of money to operate the Golf Club Enterprise Fund as shown below. Reserve Fund, $100,000. Salaries, $754,976. Operation and maintenance, $844,746. Debt service, $336,525. Total of $2,036,247. The sum to be raised as follows. From Golf Center revenue, $1,936,240. Golf retained earnings, $100,000 for a total of $2,036,247. Or take any other action thereon or relation thereto. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote to approve the golf enterprise budget as printed in the warrant.
I have a second. Finance Committee recommendation.
Finance Committee voted to approve this article.
Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll put it to a vote. All those in favor of Article 26? Thank you. Any opposed? Article 26 passes unanimously. Article 27, the Sewer Enterprise Fund. See if the town will vote to appropriate a sum of money to operate the Sewer Enterprise Fund as shown below. Reserve Fund, $60,000. Salaries, $82,708. Operations and maintenance, $650,161. Debt service, $328,576. For a total of $1,121,445. This money to be raised as follows. From sewer revenues, $732,869. Sewer retained earnings, $388,576. For a total of $1,121,445. Or take any other action thereon or in relation thereto. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Moderator, I move to vote to approve the sewer enterprise budget and to appropriate the sum of $1,121,445 for the sewer enterprise fund operations as follows: $732,869 to be raised from estimated sewer department receipts, $60,000 to be transferred from sewer retained earnings, and $328,576 to be transferred from the sewer betterment funds, and sums to be allocated between salaries, expenses, debt service, and reserve of the sewer department for the fiscal period July 1st, 2024 to June 30th, 2025, inclusive as printed in the warrant.
Second.
Finance Committee recommendation.
Finance Committee voted to approve this article.
Discussion. Hearing no discussion, we'll vote on it. All those in favor of Article 27? Thank you. All those opposed? Article 27 passes unanimously. Article 28, Stormwater Bylaw. See if the town will vote to amend the bylaws of the town by amending the current language of Article 28, Stormwater Bylaw, by inserting the following language in Appendix 1 in its place, or take any other action thereon or in relation thereto. This is an updated bylaw prepared by the town's MS4 consultant. That stands for the Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System. It's intended to comply with EPA requirements. Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote Article 28 as printed in the warrant, including the amended bylaw as printed in Appendix 1.
Do I have a second? This will take a two-thirds vote to pass, folks. Any discussion?
Mr. Moderator, just a quick thank you to Mark Francois, Ryan Resendes, Paul in planning for really tackling this and going through it to make sure we did something that really protects the town. It'll enable us to move forward with MS4 and keeping up to date, so to speak. So thank you, gentlemen.
Any further discussion? If not, we'll put it to a vote. And I remind you, it takes 2/3 to pass. All those in favor, raise your card. Those opposed? Article 28 passes by 2/3 with opposition. Having no further business, is there a motion to dissolve?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Go
Thank you,
Celtics.
town meeting.